So yeah, so we said we'd talk maybe about like what it's like to be a founder, like especially coming from an engineering standpoint. But then I realized that's kind of dumb because if you look at most founders are engineers, right? Most founders, I feel like, especially in the current Silicon Valley culture, it's like young kid, what goes into YC, you know, like two engineering founders try to build a company. So it feels like it's a common pattern, but yet I think, you know, it's very rare to see people actually do that well. And so you're on your second company kind of being a co-founder. And, you know, when I met you the first time, you know, like before Fast IP was called back then, Boundary eventually, you know, you'd just been an engineer all your life, right? You'd been an engineer in Delaware, you'd moved over, you'd done the parset thing, and this was kind of your first entry into being on the business side, so to speak, right? Is that correct? Yeah. And so it seems to me like over the years, you've learned so much, right? There's a lot of stuff to learn from, but you actually like kind of learn a lot about it. So I figured we could talk about that a little bit. And whatever kind of advice or insights you have about, like, you know, what you should do when all your life, all you've done is engineering, and all of a sudden you have to really think about more than that.
Yeah. So one point in your premise that I would actually take exception to, or not. Sure. I would say that has changed.
Right.
Maybe in the last 5 years is that. Like you're right. Like maybe in that maybe like 5 years ago, even up to like 3 years ago. It was a very common pattern to have, like, you know, an engineering founding team and, you know, people coming from very technical backgrounds starting a company. I think that has changed a lot now. I'm seeing, you know, I mean, obviously I'm not an investor, you know, but just from from what I can see, there are a shitload of companies now that have completely non-technical founders that are, like, you know, outsourcing the entire tech side. And there's whole companies now, whole consulting companies that all they do is just, like, you know, we'll build your product, we're CTO for rent type of thing.
Wow. And do you feel it's like related to the whole like Wall Street thing? You know, where, like, Wall Street was the place where, like, the smart, top of the class kids, you know, would go after college, but now they kind of come to Silicon Valley. Do you feel like that's intertwined?
There's definitely aspects of that. But I mean, you know, you look at what's going on in the rest of the country, you know, like, I mean, we're very insulated here. This is one of the few places where job growth has been very strong. You know, I look at, like, my classmates in high school, people still back in Delaware, they've not felt the recovery. You know, so, like, it has been sort of the siren call of go start a company, and I think you're seeing not just the demographic change, but, like, you know, the expectations as well.
Yeah, but there's still, like, you know, a lot of people, a lot of companies, you know, that are, like, founded by engineers, you know, exclusively by engineers. That's still a pattern, but you're right. That as it's not as much a norm as it was maybe like 10 years ago, where that kind of was the YC recipe for success, so to speak, right?
Right, exactly. And you know, and it changes the kind of company too, because, like, now there's the opportunities are more. You know, if you look at the opportunities now, a lot of them are more along the lines of, like, this is actually just kind of a regular business that now has, you know, there's tech marketing, you know, like the technology is like an ancillary. It is not. It might not even be the driving force of the company.
Right, and so I feel like that's really, really tied to the fact that, like, there's been this kind of lean startup movement, you know, and it's like it got leaner and leaner and leaner, right? And so for the first thing that went, it seemed like all the big bets, like clean energy and biotech and all that stuff, and then hardware kind of really went out the window with a few exceptions. And then, you know, like, okay, software, and then within software, people really stopped from, like, trying to reinvent full stacks and do kind of big software plays to just, like, we'll do gamification for, like, you know, retail commerce, you know, like they weren't doing, like, very, very small incremental plays. And so you're right that a lot of the engineering values has become kind of, like, as seen as lesser, right? It's just kind of has become less of a point of emphasis. But you still have, it's very interestingly, there's a lot of the same profile. The kids coming in here, quote unquote the kids, you know, not to feel old, but the people coming here out of college or, you know, soon after college, you know, they still have the same profile. They still have really, really big ideas, and they still have to kind of deal with responsibilities that are bigger than, you know, maybe what they studied for, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've got, one of those folks on my staff, right? Like, but I think that. Well, it changes a whole bunch of dynamics, but yeah, you definitely do have that influx of people coming in, and, you know, hopefully they end up somewhere that's not terrible, right? That's not going to, like, you know, grind their youthful enthusiasm into dirt.
Right. So you seem to have like held up pretty well. You still have that spark in your eye and everything. So I mean, so what's kind of maybe what's something to look out for, or something you didn't expect, right? Now, you know, how much did you know about what you would have to do the first time you went into founding a company?
Almost nothing.
In retrospect, right?
In retrospect, I knew nothing.
And do you feel like you could have done anything to prepare, or you know, like at classes or advice, or like you know?
Oh God.
Or is it really something you have to learn on the job?
Well, I think the nature of the job, right, like means or the nature of the personality that you need to do the job,
Right.
means that you can't really like you have to be so arrogant. In order to actually like say, well, I'm gonna go take on the, you know, you've got to be so arrogant and so like, and so ignorant of the not just the odds, but just the landscape. Like, you know, when we started Boundary, I didn't know what the monitoring space was. I didn't know people have been doing this for like 30, 40 years. Right. You know, I didn't know about BMC and CA and all that crap. I didn't know any of that stuff. All I knew was, you know, this looks like a cool challenge. I can build a bunch of this stuff, and I can build a team. Right. So, like, that was literally like my thought process.
Right. And you were CTO, right, of that company, right, and from the start, and so you still had this kind of very, very technical outlook, I guess, to your responsibilities. But within that sphere, you know, I assume you had to take on a lot of things about like management and fundraising and board management and all that other stuff, right? So, you know, in retrospect, do you feel like you allocated your time properly on everything, or you know, I've seen a lot of founders do this, and I wasn't there, so I don't know. But you know, a lot of founders do this thing where like they're like, oh, I'm CTO, I'm just going to do like code, right? I'm just going to work on that. Was that your pattern? Or?
No, that's no good. No, I you know, when we did the CEO change at Boundary, then I started spending you know, a lot more time, you know, managing the team, and because there was a period there where like I was sort of the linchpin, like keeping everything together.
Right, yeah.
And after that point, you know, I would split up my time between code and you know, technical roadmap, and you know, coaching the team, and you know, trying to do, you know, and then of course the evangelism as well, right? Going out to talks and yada yada.
The linchpin thing is very interesting because I felt that a lot. It's weird. I think it changes from people to people. I don't personally kind of feel that way about founders when I join companies, but I know a lot of my colleagues do, where they, you know, just from the title, it's not that there's mystique or whatever to it, but there's an expectation, right, that you're going to kind of keep the company together, and you're going to be representative of the entire company's interest, and you're going to take care of employees. And you know, that assumption, I think it sneaks up on a lot of founders that they don't really expect it. They're just guys. They're just like, they should have just showed up for work, and then yeah.
No, that's a pretty sacred one, right? Like, I take that very seriously. And if you don't, like, you're not playing the game honorably, I think. Like, you know, one of the central like whenever I've hired someone, one of the central pieces to my pitch is, hey, look, you know, let's be real about this. This could be great, or this could, you know, this could be great, or this could fail, right? Like, let's be very real about it. But I promise you will learn a lot. I'm going to throw you into the deep end of the pool. You're going to sink or swim. And you know, we'll provide support for you as much as we can, but like, you're a small company, so you're gonna have to do a lot of stuff. But if you're the right kind of person, and I think you are, because I'm making an offer, like, you know, you're gonna learn a lot, and you're gonna come out of here with an accelerated career. And the way that I look at it is that it's not just this company, right? Because we're all on a path, and the people that I hire in one place, you know, we're all going to be banging around the same ecosystem for a long time. So like, burning people out, pissing people off. You know, to be clear, I've pissed people off. We all have. I try not to, though, and I've learned from those mistakes. But essentially, like, yeah, you need to look at it from the long perspective of, you need to have a lot of people who really like working for you, and would look back on the experience of your company and say, this was valuable. And I would work for him again. Right,
and to be clear, it goes beyond like the usual like networking tropes and stuff like that. I mean, it's really crazy, but like in Silicon Valley, there's such a, you know, clique or a mafia, whatever you want to do. Like the PayPal mafia, is like the most famous one. But there is really this sense of, you know, of people working together over and over again. It is a very, very small world, you know, where people know. So if you fuck somebody over, like, you know, they will come back to haunt you. And you know, that personal promise that you make as a founder, right, to the people you hire, it's a very real thing, even though it seems trite. Right?
Yeah, because you're, I mean, especially in like, you know, in 2015, 2016. You know, you're literally luring them away from like ridiculous amounts of money, like stock option grants that,
What's the most ridiculous offer you've ever heard? By the way, while we're on the topic, just quick thing. So the most ridiculous I've heard is for an engineer, C++ engineer, I've heard $300,000 salary. This was like a few years ago with $100,000 signing bonus.
Wow.
Have you heard like weirder than that?
Yeah, but not cash wise.
Oh, wow.
Mainly stock wise. I've had people ask for things like that, and it's kind of like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, it's like most startups can't pay that, right?
right. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to do
It's
that.
a weird play.
One of our engineers, turned down something, huge stock component to it, obviously, but something that was valued on paper at like 1.5 million.
I know with Google and Facebook now being public, like a lot of those, stock valuations are actual, they're fairly liquid, right? It's stuff that you can actually count on.
Yeah, they were. This offer wasn't, but that, yeah.
Right. I mean, it makes sense, right? So, you can't match on salary, and you can always have a good technical challenge, but a lot of the big places also have a good technical challenge. So really that personality is where you can shine, right?
Yeah, exactly. You need to be able to demonstrate that, you're going to have, the things that have worked for us, like demonstrate you're going to have ownership, right? Like I'm not going to get up in your face about stuff, which is always a tough one, right? Especially if you go to work for someone very technical. The questions in your mind is going to be, well, is this guy or gal going to be like telling me how to build stuff? Right. And so you need to be very clear and say like, look, you can have ownership. You can be the first one or the second one. You can build this and like make the decisions, and I'll let you make your mistakes. Right. I'll just pull you back when the mistake is a fatal one. Right. Which is an art.
It's interesting, yeah. It goes pretty far. Like I've met CEOs. We even see that their role is like founder CEO to like never really like break that ownership. To really, even if you come and you like bring them the stupidest fucking idea ever, to let you do it, and that's kind of the best thing you can do as a founder, which is kind of a very interesting kind of paternal version, not paternalistic, but paternal version of looking at it, right? You're gonna learn, and I can't teach you everything myself, or you might actually be right on something that I feel you're wrong, and all I can do is like make sure you don't die, right?
Right. Just make sure you don't make a mistake that's gonna like screw the company terribly, right? It's. I mean, I feel like I've at least tried to do that. The right. Because I mean, my team has like almost rewritten everything that I started with, and they're like, no more Clojure. We're gonna write everything in Go now. And I'm like, fine.
Yeah, you're still on that Clojure train.
I love writing. See, now all my metrics. When I pull my metrics from the database, I use Clojure for that. So it's fine.
They're still living in your corner.
Yeah.
But it is very kind of a dad-like thing, and I don't mean Clojure, but I mean like that general outlook, right, on building a company. Do you feel like that's kind of a similar thing? Or is that like too cliche? Or
it's I don't know. I feel like it's.
You're a dad. I'm neither a founder nor a dad. So
I feel like it's a little cliche. I would call it more like it's just a good principle of leadership in general, right? Is that people respond positively to being given ownership, essentially, right? And everything that entails,
right. That makes sense. So, you went from kind of being CTO to now like your new company, your CEO, right? Mm-hmm. Founding CEO. And so what's that transition like? Do you feel like that's a drastic shift again? Mm-hmm. What's changing from one side to the other? From being like the technical co-founder to like, nominally at least a business co-founder, right?
Yeah. So the tempo is, the pace is like very different, right? And it's funny too, because like I've seen a number of CEOs and worked with a number of CEOs now that, everyone kind of has their own like sort of their own base or the way that they're wired. Because the guy we brought in at Boundary, he was a very sales oriented CEO, and because he had a sales background, fantastic salesman. His one of the things about him was that like missing a quarter was like something that he couldn't get it through his head. Like, no, we can't miss a quarter, and that's just the way salespeople are wired, right? Like, because missing a quarter is verboten. Whereas for like for an engineering CEO, like having a broken product, having engineering issues, etc., like that could be your thing that you can't do or that you won't allow happen.
Right.
And so and especially I feel like when you're sort of pushed against the wall, like when the chips are down, etc., you will you will fall back on those behaviors or the things that you're most comfortable with. And so, I think it always ends up being very specific to the company. It's like, is that going to be detrimental or beneficial, like your instincts at that point?
Right.
And it really depends on the company and the stage you're at. Like a sales CEO might have terrible instincts if you don't have product market fit, or if you're, because you might go chase go chase shiny things and then end up with a technical backlog and everything's terrible.
Right. No, I know what you mean. Yeah. I mean, you have to, fighting your instinct is a good way to put it. It's like, you have to know what you don't know, and you have to kind of think outside of your comfort zone. Is that pretty much a good summary of like having to be CEO, right? You have to constantly be outside of your comfort zone. You have to constantly think about stuff that you're probably not trained or experienced to do. Yeah,
or just like, or just even at a more basic level, like I don't, it's still very hard for me to like think that I'm doing anything productive when I'm not like shipping code and because up to this point that has been the way that I've measured myself, and now it's just like, no, you need to go write blog posts, you need to have meetings and
to hire people, you need to
find exactly
an office,
and do all those other things and especially some of the squishier ones, like, okay, we need content marketing and this, that, and the other. It's like those don't feel very productive, but it's these are things that have to happen.
Absolutely.
It's a matter of it just takes you way outside of your comfort zone.
Right. So do you feel like that requires a specific awareness, or do you feel like the job will get that out of you, right? I kind of go back and forth on that. I kind of go back and forth to like, like people should really like realize what it is that they're taking on and really take it seriously, otherwise they're gonna fuck it up. Or that because one day they're gonna be faced with that pressure of like, oh, I gotta get users to my website. How do I do that? I guess I'll focus on content marketing for a while. So do you feel like that's something that people like need particular awareness of, or how much of it does the job kind of drive upon you?
If it doesn't, then you're probably gonna fail.
That's probably a good point. Yeah.
If you've raised enough money, you can probably hire it into the company,
right?
But if you haven't, then you need to do it yourself. Which I think it's a healthy. Honestly, I think it's a healthy thing to do it yourself for a while. One of the things that I remember quite clearly, like at Boundary, was that there were some roles in the company that I was interviewing people for.
Right.
I didn't know what the hell they were supposed to do.
Right.
And I was just like, what do you think? What do you think the role of marketing head is? And like, I'm just hoping that they explain it to me in the proper way in the interview.
You have to hire smart people, make that for you.
Yeah, so if you actually know what the job entails, you might be able to hire the right person.
So that's the kind of experience that does help, right? Having been in company, at least having
done it
roles.
Poorly, right? Like even just having done it poorly yourself, just be like, well, do you have better ideas than me? Like.
No, you're right. So I guess like work experience is really like underrated, right? I kind of feel like,
oh, absolutely.
Just having been in jobs, having seen marketing people, having seen salespeople, it really gives you a lot of insight in being a founder, right?
Well, that's one of the things that really bothers me about, sort of the cult of Silicon Valley, like this cult of the neophyte,
right?
Of the, you have this brilliant behooded white man coming from Stanford, who's just gonna shake everything up, and coming from tabula rasa, has no idea what.
But I think even VCs resent that. By the way, I agree that this is kind of the average kind of like typical myth of like the founder in Silicon Valley. But now I see even a lot of VCs kind of like, oh, it's just another like, engineering kid from Stanford who doesn't know like that company's going to crash.
Oh, sure. There's the press narrative, and then there's
they'll still fund that, right?
The reality. Oh, yeah, of course. There's the press narrative, and then there's like the reality of, I'm a firm believer now that like, if you're gonna come from it from that angle of like knowing nothing, you're gonna work really, really hard and do a lot of dumb things and maybe screw it up, maybe not. I think it's a much better idea to like go and get some experience, see some real problems, maybe get some insights that you might not need to kill yourself to make this work.
But in particular, it's like for engineering founders, like I personally I'd recommend like doing some marketing, like meeting some marketing people, like getting, honestly, if you're in school and you're like, you're thinking about doing a startup after school or something like that, I would say like kind of summer as a marketing intern, as a sales intern. Like I feel like this would be like one of the number one valuable skill that I would have liked to kind of catch earlier in my life.
Or just learn that you goddamn hate it early on, so that you could just
Make
cross that off the list. Yeah, just be like, well, I'm never going to do that again.
Yeah. But so do you have other advice? I mean, it's like, it's like we're all learning and nobody's perfect, but like what are some of the stuff that you're like, oh, I should have known that earlier as a founder?
Yeah, I think so. So this is something that I've gotten over, right? And it might come off a little cliche, but goddamn, is it true? Is that just for people who are starting companies, like get over the firing thing. Like you need, like if you think something bad is happening or someone's screwing up or like they're the wrong person, just get over it and be nice about it, right? Give them a decent severance, give them a decent way out, but you have to do it,
right?
Because it's not going to get better,
right?
And the first time that I had to deal with a situation like that, someone going toxic and just being very clear that they had to go, we dragged our feet so long on it, and it doesn't make anything better. It just makes it worse. But it seems like a lesson that everyone kind of has to learn on their own, right? And make this mistake.
No, it's crazy. It really is, because I mean, I've been on both sides of this. I've been fired and I've had to fire people. And I was fired first before I really had to fire people on my own. And it still took me way too long to fire my first person. I was like, I've even haven't been the offender. It's really hard to process. So I do think it's something that people, it sneaks up on people. It is a very true thing that, especially again, if you have no work experience, if you're first time kind of being in a company and building a company, you will tend to do that too late. And that has some real impact. I mean, let's talk about it in specifics. I think, otherwise it's kind of one of those cliches. What are some of the ways that you've seen or you think that, letting a firing take too long can really impact your company negatively?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that ignoring your instincts is a big one. So, it's like, especially like if you're if you're founder, management position, etc. There's you gotta recognize that you kind of see things through like sort of a smoked glass, like you're not seeing everything. And so if the warning bells are going off in your head about something, it's probably worse than you think it is.
You probably know less than you think.
Yeah, you know less than you think you do, and if that's happening, you need to look into it like ASAP, because it's not going to get better.
Right. Another one that I've seen is that we talked about that trust that employees have towards you, right? And so I think some people will clearly feel spurned, or the trust at least is kind of misplaced. If they see an obvious problem and they don't see you react to it.
Oh yeah.
That's
well, that's the other thing, is that by the time you react, it's obvious to everyone else. Right. And no matter how fast you do it, that's always going to be true.
Yeah.
Because just by the time you get the paperwork set up, it's just going to be
right. No, and I think that's very important, right? We began on that, and I think it's the right thing. Like that trust, you have to earn it. You have to build it. You have to build your company, and you're hiring on that, and that's your responsibility as a founder or co-founder. But taking too long to fire someone who's clearly toxic or not working out is one of the easiest ways to lose it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's another some mental block of thinking that this is the end of the world or whatever, again, our careers go on much longer than this. And if you take care of someone on the way out, at least, and give them a decent, severance, etc., it makes it less of less. It takes the sting out of it a little bit, hopefully, and it makes it less of a conflict type of thing. Hopefully.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for me, obviously, we're privileged and all that stuff, and we land on our feet. But for me, it's getting fired was probably one of the best things that happened to me, at least in the context of that job. But in the moment, it was really, really hard to process, and it did throw me for a loop.
Yeah.
But I do like to think, even though that's cliche, that sometimes firing somebody can be the best possible thing for that person, right?
Oh yeah.
To get them out of a toxic loop, to get them to to do something more satisfying with their life. Although, again, not everybody's as privileged, and they've been able to immediately land another job and have that gap on their resume and all that stuff. That can be tricky for some people to recover from.
I mean, despite my best efforts, I haven't been on that side of the table yet. So one of these days.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen to all of us.
Yeah.
Makes sense.